America's freedom!
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for watching the John Woodard Show. We're thrilled to have the opportunity to talk to Representative Keith Kidwell of the North Carolina legislature. He's an active member and very well thought of in his district, and we'd like to get his take on what's happening in the state right now on a whole range of issues, and so we'll just get right at it. Keith, how are you this evening?
Well, John, good to talk to you today. Thank you for the opportunity.
Well, thank you, sir. Last time we spoke, we talked about that you were doing some vetting candidates to see if what they represented themselves to be was actually was real or fake. How are you making out with that?
Well, I think their votes speak for them on the floor of the House, so that's kind of what we're looking at. We have, as you're aware, I'm chairman of the North Carolina House Freedom Caucus, and what we intend to do is when we get back in session, we're going to sit down and have a few meetings, and I think we're going to put together a questionnaire, John, that we will provide to those seeking re-election as well as those that are running for the first time, and probably interview those candidates and see if there's somebody that the Freedom Caucus can get behind and endorse, because we want to make sure we're putting people up there that understand both the North Carolina and the U.S. Constitutions, to the fact that we are a republic, we are in favor of the Second Amendment, we're in favor, like this week is National School Choice Week, which interestingly enough, Governor Cooper has decided he's going to support School Choice Week. That was quite the turnabout on his part, but you know, that's not unusual for Roy Cooper to do a little flip-flopping here and there.
He and the fish have something in common.
Yeah. He should open his own Waffle House.
Well, the school choice is a big issue, of course, with all of the critical race theory and the pornography in schools and on and on and on. How do you feel that the legislature is going to be able to deal with that? Do you think that they'll put the money with the student and let the student go wherever they want to, or what?
Well, John, if we're talking about the rest of this session where Roy Cooper is basically in charge,
yes, sir,
Mr. Veto, okay, hasn't met a bill he doesn't like to veto. It's quite impossible to get anything done, and then we can't get anybody on the left to join us in any type of a veto override, or for that fact, anything that even makes sense. And it's absolutely, the left has done nothing but beat down every bill we try to bring forward. I did get some good legislation through. I was able to get into the budget, reining in the governor's powers. Unfortunately, the only way we could get him to sign it is to not make it effective until the beginning of next year. But it's still a win, because after 2023, any future governor will not be able to do what the governor has done. We're having a lot of difficulty in getting these things accomplished. We have put forth the efforts, John. We've put forth the bills to get rid of CRT in North Carolina. We just simply cannot get the support from the left, nor are we going to get any support. If we did get it through the House and Senate, we're not going to get the support from the governor. He's going to veto the bills. It's that simple. This Republican caucus is strongly against CRT. We have talked about it time and time again. We have no interest in that being taught in our schools. We have no interest in pornography in our schools. We have done everything within our power currently to stop that. Now, I know some people, matter of fact, one of the people in the press that's supposed to be on the right side has actually called me a rhino. Okay? John, if I'm a rhino, the Republican Party has lost. According to Civitas, I am the single most conservative member in the General Assembly. I've won a 100% perfect score all 3 years that I've served. Only member of the North Carolina General Assembly to ever have achieved that. Okay? The point of it is I know what battles we can and can't win. Right now, anything that has to do with school choice or CRT or pro-life or pro-Second Amendment, we simply can't get those through. And when we do, we put them on the governor's desk. He's vetoed them. I think he's up to 68 vetoes. Governor Cooper owns more vetoes than all previous governors in the state of North Carolina combined.
He's a partisan, and he's got a base that he has to play to. I think he goes overboard with it.
Well, when you can take most of the legislation that's been put through by the General Assembly and have him sign so few bills, do you really think that 69 members of the General Assembly are always wrong? I don't believe that to be the case. We're there, John. Let me remind you what our title is. We are the representatives of the people.
Yes, sir.
If we're there representing the people, and most of us won by vote margins, were hefty vote margins. We're not talking squeak outs here. We didn't get to 69 members in the House with squeaked out elections. Most of them are majority, sweeping majorities. In my case, I think it was 67% of the vote. So it's obvious that the people in our districts like what we do and what we say, but the governor doesn't understand that. He has to understand this is a representative government, not a Roy Cooper government.
It's very unfortunate that that's the way politics seems to have evolved. The days of Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill have passed, and it's all my team against your team. And
you know what's interesting,
wants
John?
To work with anybody.
John F. Kennedy today would be branded a radical right-wing president based on the things he did. Ask not what you can do for your country, or ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. Could you imagine any leftist Democrat today saying that?
Not a chance. And that's really what's wrong with the country. And a lot of people with evolving move towards socialism that we're facing right now, people have they're running into the arms of convention of states and measures like that in order to try and have some voice in their government. There's a lot of people that are in convention of states and others that are firmly against it. How do you feel about it?
Well, John, convention of states, I want you to realize, and I've done a lot of reading on this subject, but most of all, let's start with the U.S. Constitution. The Constitution does not define who is in charge of a convention of states. The Constitution does not define that if you can limit the scope of a convention of states. Now, Anton Scalia said it was one of the biggest threats to our country was a convention of states. Here's what I want you to realize. Back in the 20s, Congress did a study, and that book is still on the shelf. And that study said, when there's a convention of states, Congress is in charge. So let's extrapolate that to today. We have Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden. We're going to take our Constitution, open it up for a total rewrite. What could possibly go wrong?
Well, I asked that because I'm going to interview a lady that's the North Carolina State Director of the Convention of States, and I've got a list of questions right over here to ask her. That was one of them.
But John, what I want you to do is ask her specifically where in the Constitution it says you can limit the scope of a convention of states, because it does not. What it says is the states can convene a convention of states. If that were to happen, once you go to convention, I don't know if you've been in a political convention, but whether it's a party convention, I don't care what kind of convention it is, the first thing a convention does is vote on the rules. Okay? Now, you can send forth this nice, here's a set of rules that we want to go by, but here's what happens, because I've seen it done at conventions, John. The committee itself that you've appointed votes on those rules. They can vote to accept them, they can vote to amend them, or they can vote to throw them in the trash and start over. So there is actually nothing within the U.S. Constitution that says you can have a limited convention of states. Now, I know that that's their position is, we can limit the scope. That's what they did in 1787. They went in to tweak the Articles of Confederation, decided they were worthless, threw them in the trash, rewrote them, and thankfully came out with our wonderful Constitution. Okay? I don't think we have the intelligence in this country that those men had that sat around that table in Philadelphia that would be required. We have a Constitution that's merely pages long. Okay? Could you imagine how thick a new U.S. Constitution would be? They had $3,000 on a health, or 3,000 pages on a health care bill.
Yeah.
And then the next thing is, let's not forget, Nancy Pelosi runs the House. Now, she told us with the health care bill, if you want to read it, you have to pass it first. So is that going to hold true with a new Constitution as well? If we want to read the new Constitution, we have to pass it first? Again, what could possibly go wrong with Nancy and Chuck up there and Sleepy Joe sitting over there?
Well, but the point is that this might seem like an extreme measure to some, but to others that are looking to put some people in the process that take their government back, take their country back, feel that the country is slipping away from them into socialism, Marxism, or worse, and they just simply don't know what the hell to do. They don't know whether to turn left or turn right.
John, the problem we have. Let me address that, because the problem, as I see it, and I could be wrong. I used to sit and yell at the TV. I found out pretty quickly that didn't do any good. Okay?
That's right.
There are many people today that still sit there and yell at the TV. I ask this question in virtually every meeting I go to. Where were you on election day? Were you down at the polls working as an observer on the inside? Because here's what I can tell you. In Beaufort County, in the last election, we had virtually zero poll observers from the Republican Party in any of the 21 polling precincts in Beaufort County. Okay? Inside watching. Now, you're going to say, well, they stole the election. You let them steal the election because we had no security from our team watching inside the polls in Beaufort County. Yeah, and I'm going to get people, well, they threw us out, this, that, and the other. That's fine. They couldn't have thrown us out in all 100 counties and every precinct throughout the entire state. And here's all I can tell you. I put a security camera on my cash register 30 years ago because I was losing money in my office. Not a lot, a few $100s each year. I put a security camera in to watch that cash drawer. From that day to this, John, I've lost $25 in nearly 30 years, okay? If we put eyes in the polling places with both parties, it's going to put it in a situation where cheating will become significantly more difficult. So if you were sitting home on your couch last year, you're part of the problem. If you're going to sit home on your couch this year, don't call me up and complain because you haven't done your job. America needs to participate in the election process. That doesn't mean just go out and vote. That means get active. I don't care if you get active in party politics or not. But if you're complaining about the security of the elections, contact your party leadership in your county. Tell them you want to be a poll observer in the next election, and let us put poll observers in every one of the precincts from open to close, because I guarantee you that will help to reduce any events of election fraud. Will it get rid of it? No. Not going to happen. There's always been fraud in elections. We can go back to the battles they had out in Tennessee where it actually broke out into a gun war. Okay? Back right after World War II. These things have happened throughout the history of our nation. But if the people are complacent and sit home, you're part of the problem. Okay? You want to be part of the answer? Get off your butt and do something. And I'll tell you the next thing. Run for office. Don't sit there and complain about your school board. Go run for school board. Don't complain about your town council. Run for town council. Put your money where your mouth is. John, if you go back to our founding fathers again, what did they pledge? Their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor. We should do no less today.
Absolutely right. And, I must say that from, my observation, relatively limited geographically, there seems to be an increased emphasis now on average citizens running for positions in their local governments where the decisions are ultimately made that are closest to the people. But they feel that most people acknowledge that problem exists, and there's a method to correct it. Trying to correct the problems in Washington with people that go up there and are basically just they're there for their vote. They're not there for anything else. They don't generate any legislation. They come home and talk to the people once in a while about what's going on, and that's the end of the involvement of most of the leaders in Washington. I think people are sensing a lot of frustration. I had a man tell me the other day, said he was apathetic about the Republicans and scared to death of the Democrats.
And I'll bet you his answer to that was to sit home and do nothing. Let's go back to the
yes.
Yeah, let's go back to the Constitution and having a convention. Here's the other thing that interests me. The people who are for the Convention of States say, well, if we can pass, and whatever it is that they want to pass, some want term limits, some want budget amendments, things of that nature. If we can pass those, we can fix this country. What makes you think you're going to pass a law that will make Congress abide by a Constitution that they currently ignore? See, the problem is
they don't abide by it now, so how are they going to abide by a revised version?
How do you make a bank robber stop robbing banks just by putting new laws in place? Okay? That's not going to happen, okay? If you want to stop Congress, or if you want to stop the North Carolina General Assembly, or if you want to stop the school board in Pitt County, who just yesterday decided it was okay to show pornography in the schools in Pitt County, you're not going to stop that by calling me at the General Assembly and saying, Keith, we need new laws. Okay? First of all, putting the people in charge of fixing the problems they've created is not going to solve the problem. Okay? Let's just call it the way it is. When you look to the government to solve all of your problems, you're creating more problems than you're solving. You want to solve these problems? Here's how you do it. It's really simple. Run for school board. If you're not going to run for school board, find somebody that's going to be an honest person and get behind them. Support them. Support them financially. Support them physically. Go out and work polls, ring doorbells, make phone calls. You have got to make sure we elect people who are going to do what they're supposed to do, and once they're in, that they do what they said they were going to. Now, I would position myself to say Nancy Pelosi has done exactly what she told her people she was going to do. Joe Biden is doing exactly what he told you he was going to do. But they end up in office. The bottom line is, if you send, it's an old computer, John, Joe, garbage in, garbage out. You send garbage to represent you, guess what you're going to get? Garbage. If you send people who believe pornography is okay to sit on your school board, is it their fault or is it your fault?
Well, there's so many issues about that, but that is clearly one of them. You've got to remove people that advocate for pornography in schools. People were horrified to find out what was in the library in their various schools, and some of them, like up in Loudoun County, they spoke up and energized the electorate in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and they took a candidate that was behind in the polls and made him a winner. So that tells you that's the recipe for success. That's
right. And you look at what the new governor of Virginia is doing right now. I mean, his first day in office, he started getting rid of mask mandates and vaccine mandates and the schools requiring masks in the school buildings and all this. You've got the DeSantis doing that in Florida. You've got Noem doing that up in the Dakota. We need people in elected office here in North Carolina, starting with our school boards, our town councils, our county commissioners, our House of Representatives, our North Carolina Senate, and those in Washington, D.C., who are going to go there and do what they told you to do. I can guarantee you, John, I went to Raleigh and I'm doing what people sent me there to do. Okay? I'm up there fighting this fight many times by myself. Many times I am the single no vote on a bill. Okay? Because I read the bills, John. Okay? I read the bills. I was introduced by one of the most senior members of the House about 6 months ago. He introduced me to some colleagues of his that came up from his area, introduced me as the conservative conscience of the North Carolina House. Okay? I wear that moniker proudly.
I'm sure you do. What do you think about the what's the latest on the redistricting? I mean, I know that we've got approved maps, but there's some pushback now and about the legitimacy of the process that led to the maps that we have. What can you tell me about that?
So, John, all I can tell you, I did not personally go into the room because I chose not to. The more people that went into the room, the more chances of monkeying up the process. But here's what I do know. We had the most transparent map drawing process ever in the history of this country in this map drawing process. Here's what we had. We had a room that was open to the public anytime it was in use. Nobody was permitted in the room when it was not open to the public. We had it constantly on camera. So the whole time the maps were being drawn, it was video remoted out so you could actually see what was happening live on screen, and you could view who was in the room and hear what they were saying. The press was welcome into the room. Both sides of the aisle were invited into the room. The only way it could be more transparent is if the public was there, and that was permissible. You could have been in there if you wanted to. There has never been a more transparent process in redrawing maps than what we had in the state of North Carolina this year. Now, what's interesting, I find, you've heard the term sue to your blue. I mean, that is where the Democrats are. We knew before the maps were drawn, we heard through the rank and file that these 4 lawsuits that they would file, no matter what we did with the maps. So they knew before the process was defined, before it worked out, before they knew what the results were, they knew they were going to sue us to have new maps drawn, no matter the outcome. Okay? I might also add that for 140 years, while the left was in control, gerrymandering was perfectly acceptable in the state of North Carolina.
It's always a case of whose ox is being gored, right?
I think that Barack Obama said it best. And I hate to ever quote Barack Obama. It's probably the only thing I agree with. Elections have consequences.
Yes, sir, they do. When you talk about the will of the people is what put those legislators in office. And if you want to defy people, then they're, that's just the way the game is played. And so you gotta adhere to something, I guess. But this is really a difficult situation, and we're seeing a lot of that spill over into various other areas. I don't know where the national political scene is going. Biden is underwater up to his neck, and Nancy Pelosi has just announced that she's going to run for re-election.
Oh, I know the people of California are real proud of that.
Oh, they are, I'm sure. But back to Virginia politics. How's the North Carolina? How's the budget going?
Well, the budget, believe it or not, we got passed. So.
Oh yes, I know that you did.
Yeah.
What do you think about the budget process 2 years from now?
Well, I'm hopeful that we will have a supermajority after the 2022 elections. And if that is to happen, I think we will end up with a much streamlined budget. Not that this one was horrible, but I think we could have definitely done with less fat. We could have done a whole lot more work in the areas that needed to be done. Now, I want to go back to our last budget process, John. We offered the governor 5 pay raises for teachers in not this budget currently in effect, but the previous budget. 5 different times, 5 different amounts, okay? Do you know which one he actually signed into law?
The first one.
No, the last one. $350 one time to the teachers. Now, we offered 5%, 6%, 4%, regular raises. He signs into law $350 one time. You know why? Because that's all we could get him to agree with. Then he'll want to sit there and say, oh, I did everything I could. No, sir, Governor, you did nothing.
I just said the first one because it sounded that's what you were leading up to, and I didn't really know what the number was.
$350, John. And then, the teachers want to say, you guys did. No, we did. We did. We gave you a decent raise. And the governor refused to sign it. Just a minute, I do want to run this by you.
Yes,
the North
sir.
Carolina House Freedom Caucus has been working, although sometimes kind of behind the scenes because you don't want to go out and tell the enemy what you're doing. We've been working to expose any problems in our elections, but mainly working towards solving these problems in the future. Okay? Because here's what I do know. If we don't fix the 2022 elections, we're going to be in the same boat we've been in the past. We don't want that
Yes,
to happen. Here's what I can tell you. We have sat down with the Board of Elections on several occasions. I've been back and forth with basically the North Carolina House version of a Freedom of Information request under North Carolina General Statute 12019. And I have exposed the fact that the elections director removed modems. Now, we did know, the whole state, we knew there was modems in the older equipment that was bought in, I think, in 2006. We were also told at a Freedom Caucus meeting by the Board of Elections that those modems could not be removed from those machines or it would permanently damage the machines. But as they were phased out, they would do that. So here's what's interesting. The General Assembly was out of session right before Christmas, and the Board of Elections sent people out to have modems removed from the equipment in 6 counties. Well, Watauga County did not know, according to the director of the elections there, did not know that they were coming out to remove modems. Okay? Matter of fact, John, the work order said preventative maintenance. Okay? When they got out there and started taking modems out of the machines, which remember, they said could not be taken out or they would damage the machine. Okay? They came out, took the modems out of the machines. The work orders did not say we're going to remove modems. But the guy was smart enough, the director of elections, to recognize that they were taking modems out. So he made them write it on the work order. Now, under the request of documentation, I've gotten it on 2 counties so far, and I already had the one from Watauga. The other 2 just said preventative maintenance. Now, they did this, I'm going to call it under the cover of darkness, because it was done when the General Assembly was out of session. So they were thinking it would be less likely they would get caught. Well, they got caught. I got a copy of that paperwork. And the director of the Board of Elections did not make this public until a press release the day after, she knew I had my hand on proof that they were taking the modems out of these machines. Now, if they couldn't be removed, did it miraculously change in December of 2021 that they could all of a sudden take these modems out? 6 counties had modems removed from their machine. I've asked for the documentation, and I've gotten most of it, I believe, on when this order was done, why it was done, why they did it at the timing that they did it, okay, which, interestingly enough, John, was after the municipal elections, okay? So if you were trying to make sure we were securing our elections and to at least put forth the appearance we were securing our elections, you would have done it before the municipals and the machines were used, okay? So I find it interesting the way these things are unfolding. I've also uncovered information that they've had 2, what I've been told by elections directors, secret meetings between the primaries and the general elections called kickoff and huddles, okay? And that they were told not to make any recordings of these meetings. Just yesterday, I found out that there was one person who released some of that information to the public, and that person has been terminated from their job, okay? So everything that I keep seeing does not show where the Board of Elections is trying to be transparent. I have asked the director of our Board of Elections now, I believe 4 times, for a meeting with the Freedom Caucus and her. Not the entire caucus, just the leadership of the caucus. So we could sit down, not to attack her. We want to know what we can do to secure our elections as we move into 2022. We want to know what she is willing to work with. And so far, I have either gotten no response whatsoever or an excuse that she couldn't meet on the 10 different days that I made available to be able to sit in her office. I will continue that push. I will continue to expose anything we do find. And most importantly, we will continue to press to secure the 2022 election. I'm going to ask the public one more time. Get up, get out of your sofa, get out of your boats, get out of your hunting stands on election day, be at the polls, volunteer as a poll observer. Make sure we have this at every precinct in every county in the entire state of North Carolina. That is the first step to securing your elections.
Election integrity is the most vital thing that we can do to protect our Constitution and our republic. I don't understand. This whole thing has been very disconcerting to. I know Doug Gould, I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
And I that he's been involved in the cyber review of the 2020 election. He hasn't talked very much about it, but what he has said about it is has confirmed what people had believed all along. You can't. How do you have honest elections going forward if you have as the base of it an illegitimate election from 2020? How do you go forward unless you solve those problems?
No, and that's really what I'm seeking to do, is to not put Band-Aids. I would like to see us pass legislation with teeth in it that says if you violate an election law, that you're going to serve some time or you're going to pay some fine. When people go in and double vote, I think they need to go to jail. You can't tell me you accidentally double voted. Okay? The biggest problem we're seeing, John, is when these cases are brought forward, the district attorneys aren't prosecuting. That's a problem in and of itself. So you need to pay attention to that, because guess what? District attorneys are elected. Okay? So let's make sure. Now, I don't know how much fraud was in our last elections. I'll guarantee you there was some. I can tell you this much. Trump won. He won in North Carolina. There's no doubt in my mind Trump won North Carolina. We proved that. Okay? We went back and we audited the Paul Newby race, right, 3 times. And Paul Newby squeaked out a win, 418 votes, I think. Okay? Up and down the board, in the projections that we had and what the elections were going to look like, we nailed it every time. The one we missed was the Cooper Forest election. The Cooper Forest election, Dan Cooper actually outperformed what we had anticipated. That's very interesting. Okay? And I know there's naysayers out there going to say Cooper didn't win. And there might have been enough fraud for Cooper to take out the election there. But Dan Forest didn't contest it. I haven't seen him file a protest that said, hey, I want to recount on all of this. Now, he could have, but he did not. Okay?
Well, he may have seen what happened to Pat McCrory and thought that he was swimming upstream on that. I think he had also lost a lot of enthusiasm. He was a completely different person. He was very subdued after the election, as you would expect him to be.
Yeah.
But
well, interestingly enough, and I made this point even to a professional that works in the election process all the time. On the morning of the election in Beaufort County, I was standing outside the polls the first day. Okay? So when they started early voting, there was about 200 people lined up to go in and vote. Out of that 200 people, John, I think 199 or 198 had masks on, which is fine. If you want to wear a mask, I don't want to get into that argument. But I looked at that line, and I looked at the elections guy standing next to me. I said, you see that line? I said, Cooper's going to win. He said, why do you say that? You think every one of them's a Democrat? I said, no. I think it's probably an even mix. But I think the fact that all of them are wearing masks, which we're now learning really didn't help much, the fact that all of them were wearing masks tells me that Cooper made them feel safe. And remember, instilling fear is one of the best ways you win an election. When everybody's afraid and you make them feel safe, you're probably going to win. And yes, I think that had a lot more to do, because that was more. I had Republicans walk out and tell me. Republicans walk out and tell me. I stood there 17 days. Come out and tell me, more than one of them. Well, I voted straight Republican ticket except for Cooper because he's doing such a good job with COVID. So, yeah, I mean, that told me what I need to know.
Yes, sir. It surely did. Well, thank you again, sir. It was very kind of you to talk with me today, and you're I think one of the hardest working legislators out there, and the voters in your district recognize that and appreciate you for it. Thank you so much for the interview.
John, thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you again.